in the backend, and then we'll get the new cart and update the page without needing to refresh. One other thing we have to do here is remember Axios.post contacts the backend. So this is asynchronous code. It does not finish right away. That means we need to wait for this code to finish before going on to the next line. To wait for this to finish, at the front of this code, we can type await and space. And remember, in order to use await, we need to be inside an async function. So we'll add async. And also, this code is not inside a use effect. So we can just use async directly here, like this. After that, load cart is also asynchronous. So it's a good idea to await this code as well to be consistent. So now let's save, and we'll check the website. And first we'll go back to the home page. And this time, let's click Add to Cart on this toaster. So we'll click Add to Cart. And now notice that the quantity here updated to 5 without needing to refresh. If we go to the cart and scroll down, it also updated the cart on the page without needing to refresh. We'll go back to the home page, and we're going to make these quantity selectors work. So this lets us add more than one product to the cart at a time. We're going to go to our code, and first we need to get the quantity in the quantity selector. To do that, we're going to use a controlled input. We learned controlled inputs when creating the text box in the chatbot project. So as a review, we'll scroll up, and we're going to create a state to save the quantity. At the top, we're going to import curly brackets use state from React. And in this component, we're going to create a state. Const square bracket equals use state and brackets. And we're going to name the state the quantity, comma, and the updater function set quantity. And we'll set the starting value of the quantity to 1. Then we're going to scroll down, and we're going to find this select element. So this element represents the selector on the page. And we're going to give this 2 props. The first prop is the value equals curly brackets, and the value is the quantity. The second prop is on change equals curly brackets, and we're going to give this a function. So brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And whenever we use an event handler like onClick or onChange, this function gets a parameter called event. So event contains details about the event. In this case, the event will contain the quantity that we selected, which is one of these values. To get the quantity that we selected, we can use event.target.value. And let's save the quantity we selected in a variable. At the front, we'll create const quantity selected equals this value. Now, one thing to be careful of is this value is going to be one of these values here. And these are going to be a string. So we need to convert it into a number. To do that, around this value, we're going to use the code capital N number, open bracket, and close bracket. So this will convert the string here into a number. So now that we have the quantity that we selected, let's save it into the state using set quantity brackets quantity selected. So this is called a controlled input when we have a value and an onChange property. When we change the selector, it's going to set the quantity in the state, and then the new state is going to be set as the value, and then it updates the page. So we're basically putting React in the middle of this process so that we have access to the quantity that we selected. And that's a review of how controlled inputs work. And let's also console dot log the quantity selected to see if it works. So we'll save and we'll go to the website and we're going to open the console with right click, inspect, and the console. And now on the website, we're going to click the quantity selector here and we'll select 3. And now inside the console, it displays the quantity that we selected. However, there is a problem here. Notice on this website, when we change one quantity selector, it changes all of them. So if I change this one here to 5, it changes all the quantities. So let's fix this. We'll go back to the code. And if we scroll to the top, this is happening because the state here is outside of this loop. So that means the state is shared across all the products. That's why when we change one selector, it changes all of them. To solve this problem, we need to move this state inside this loop so that each product has its own quantity. So we're going to select this code and cut. And inside this loop, we're going to paste. However, this code actually breaks the rules of React hooks. We can only put hooks at the top level of a component. We should not put hooks inside a loop like this. To fix this problem, we can separate each product into its own component. So inside the home folder, we're going to create a new file and we'll name it product.jsx. And we'll create a component for each product, which is export function product, brackets and curly brackets. And we're going to return the HTML for each product. Inside the products grid, we're going to collapse this code. And this is the code for each product. So we'll select it and copy. And inside the product component, we're going to paste. And then Control or Command Shift P, format document. We'll scroll up. And we'll go back to the products grid. And we also need to copy over the state. So we're going to select this, copy, and inside product at the top, we're going to paste. And we'll fix these errors. So first we need to import use state. At the top, we'll import curly brackets use state from React. And the product, we'll get it from the props using curly brackets product. Scroll down. We'll need the format money function as well as Axios and load cart. So first, we'll import curly brackets format money from a string, and we'll find //utils/money. At the top, we're going to import Axios from Axios, and we'll get the load cart function from the props. So comma load cart and save. So now each product has a separate state. It has its own quantity. And this is no longer breaking the rules of hooks because this state is at the top level of this component. We'll go back to the products grid. And here we can remove this HTML and just use our component less than product / greater than. And we need to give it the product equals product and also the load cart function equals load cart. And we can remove this state. And remember, when we loop through an array, we need to give it a key prop. So at the front here, we'll set a key equals curly brackets, and we'll set it to the product.id. And finally, we need to import this component. So we'll scroll up, and at the top, we'll import curly brackets, the product component from a string, and it's right beside this file. So we'll do ./product. and we can remove these because they're no longer being used, and save. And since we have the key in this loop here, we can also go into the product and remove the key in here and save. Now let's open the website. And if we change one of these selectors, notice that each product can now have its own quantity. Now that we have this quantity, when we add a product to the cart, let's use this quantity. We'll go to our code, and we're going to go inside each product, and we're going to scroll down to the Add to Cart button here. And instead of adding a quantity of 1 every time, we're going to add the quantity that is saved in the state above. So now let's save, and we'll try out this code. We'll open the website, and let's go to this plate product, and we're going to select a quantity of 3 this time. And we'll click Add to Cart. And notice that the cart updated, and it now has a quantity of 8, which is 3 more than before. If we open the cart and we scroll to the bottom, we now have 3 of these plates in the cart. So now the quantity selector is working. Let's go back to the home page. And this time, let's try adding a product that already exists in the cart. So for the plate product, we're going to select the quantity of 3 again, and we're going to click Add to Cart. Notice the cart quantity increased by 3, and if we open the cart and scroll down, instead of adding a new plate product, it just increased the quantity by 3 for a total of 6. So if the product already exists in the cart, the backend handles this situation for us and just increases the quantity. Remember, the purpose of the backend is to manage the data. By letting the backend manage and update the data, we can simplify our React code. Let's go back to our code, and we're going to do some cleanup in this component. First, instead of doing quantity : quantity, we can use the shorthand property syntax and just use the quantity. It does the same thing as before. Next, instead of putting our event handlers directly in the HTML like this, we usually save this in a separate function. So let's select all this code and copy, and we're going to scroll up, and at the top, we're going to create a function const add to cart equals, and we'll paste that code. So we usually save the function separately like this, and then we can scroll down. We can remove this code and just use the function name add to cart. And this makes the code easier to read. Next, we'll scroll up to the quantity selector. We can remove the console.log, and we'll move this into a separate function as well. We'll select this code and copy, and we'll scroll up. And here, we're going to create another function, const select quantity, and make it equal, and we'll paste that code. And we'll use this function below. So down here, instead of putting this function directly in the HTML, we'll use the function name select quantity and save. And that's it. We created the add to cart feature. In the final project, there's a small message that pops up when we click add to cart, but I'll leave this as an exercise. Now let's save this into Git. We'll open the Git section, and let's use the message create add to cart feature and commit. Before we continue, I want to go back to the code that we wrote. So we're going to scroll up in this component, and I want to explain Axios.post a little more. As a review, when we send a request to the backend, we can set a URL path. Based on the URL path, the backend can do different things. For example, if we use /API/products, the backend gives us the products. If we use /API/cart items, the backend gives us the cart. In addition to the URL path, every request also has a type. In the previous lesson, when we did axios.get/API/cart items, this actually sends the type get and the URL path /API/cart items to the backend. So it sends two pieces of information to the backend, the type and the URL path. When we did axios.post/API/cart items, this sends the type post and the URL path /API/cart items to the backend. Now, when the backend receives our request, it looks at both the type and the URL path to decide what to do. For example, if the backend receives get and /API/cart items, it will get the cart items and return it. If the backend receives post and /API/cart items, it will create a new cart item. So both the type and the URL path together determine what the backend does. In the description, I have a documentation page for my backend. And it lists all the different requests that my backend supports. Notice that each request has a type and a URL path. By the way, the type is also called a HTTP method. When working with a backend, there are 4 common types of requests that we use: get, post, put, and delete. Get means we want to get some data. Post means we want to create some data. Put means we want to update some data. And delete means we want to delete some data. So Axios has a method for each type. Axios.get sets the type of request to get. Axios.post sets the type to post. Axios.put sets the type to put. And Axios.delete sets the type to delete. And then between the brackets, we put the URL path. So in our code, this sends a request to the backend with the type post and the URL path /API/cart items. So the most important thing to remember here is that each request has a type and a URL path, and both of these determine what the backend will do. In the rest of this lesson, we'll get more practice sending different types of requests to the backend. Next, let's go back to the website. And inside the checkout page, for each product, we have these delivery options. So we're going to add the ability to update the delivery option. Because we're updating something in the cart, we're going to practice using a put request. First, let's find the code for these delivery options. We'll go back to our code and open our files. And we're going to find the pages and checkout folder, and we're going to open deliveryoptions.jsx. And we'll scroll down. And here, each of these represents one delivery option on the page. So we're going to put an onClick property on this element. Now, usually we put the onClick on the input, but in this case, this will make only the radio selector clickable. Instead, we want the entire delivery option, including the text, to be clickable. So that's why we're going to put the onClick on the outside component. So we're going to add the onClick attribute equals curly brackets. And let's create a function for this. Above this, we'll create a function with const, and let's name it update delivery option equals, and let's make it an async function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets, because we know we're going to make a request to the backend to update the delivery option. Also, we create the function here inside of this loop, because we need access to each delivery option. So next, to update the delivery option for a product, we're going to make a request to the backend. We're going to scroll to the top, and at the top, we'll import Axios from Axios. And we'll scroll back down. And inside here, according to my documentation, my backend supports the request put/API/cart items. This lets us update the cart. For example, we can update the delivery option for a product. So we're going to do Axios.put brackets. This sends a request with the type put to the backend. And we'll set the URL path to /API/cart-items. And we'll add another slash, and we're going to insert the product ID that we want to update here at the end of the URL path. So in my documentation, :product ID is known as a URL parameter. This means my backend wants the product ID we want to update inside the URL. This is just a naming convention that is popular with backends. When we update something, we usually put the ID of what we want to update inside the URL. So here, first we're going to change this to a template string using backticks. And then at the end, we'll insert $curly brackets, and we're going to insert the product ID that we want to update. So the product ID is saved inside the cart item. So inside here, we're going to insert the cart item dot product ID. Next, we need to tell the backend which delivery option we want to update to. To do that, we're going to give the backend some data. At the end of this, we'll add a comma and an object. And in my documentation, this section tells us what data we can send to the backend. Here, we can send the delivery option ID that we want to update to. So we're going to give the backend the delivery option ID that we want to update to. So if we scroll up here, we want to update to this delivery option. So we'll tell the backend to update to the delivery option.id. And after we update the delivery option, we're going to reload the cart and update the page. So in front of this, let's wait for this to finish using await. And remember, we created a function for reloading the cart called loadCart. So inside app.jsx, we're going to share loadCart with the checkout page. So down here, we'll add a prop, load cart equals curly brackets, load cart, and save. And then inside the checkout page, at the top, we're going to get load cart. And now we need to share this with the delivery options. Now the delivery options are actually inside the order summary. So we're going to share it with the order summary first. We'll scroll down to the order summary. And here, we're going to give it the load cart equals curly brackets, load cart, and save. Inside the order summary, at the top, we're going to get from the props load cart, and then we're going to share it with the delivery options. So we'll scroll down to these delivery options, and we'll give it the prop load cart equals curly brackets, load cart, and save. And finally, in the delivery options, we can get load cart from the props. So comma load cart, and scroll down. After we update the delivery option, we're going to await load cart and brackets so that we reload the cart and update the page, and we don't have to refresh to see the updates. Finally, we're going to take this function and put it in this onClick. So update delivery option and save. Now let's go to the website and we'll try changing a delivery option. And now you can see that it updates when we change the delivery option. Now, one last thing here is if we open the console, we're going to get this warning message saying we provided a checked property without an onChange handler. So let's fix this warning. We're going to go back to the code. And the warning means that for an input element, if we have a checked prop, we should also have an onChange prop. OnChange lets us change the value of this input. However, in our situation, we already use this onClick up here to change the value of the input. So we don't really need an onChange property. So in here, to get rid of that warning, we can just add an onChange property equals curly brackets and give it an empty function. And this will just make the warning go away. We'll save and go back to our website. And let's refresh. And now if we change the delivery option and check the console, we no longer get that warning. Next, we have another problem on this page, which is when we update the delivery option, the payment summary here is not updating to show the new delivery price. To fix this, after we update a delivery option, we also want to reload the payment summary. So let's find the code for reloading the payment summary. We'll go to our code and we're going to open the checkout page. And we're going to scroll up. And inside this use effect, we have this code here that reloads the payment summary. So we want to rerun this code after updating the delivery option. Now, we could separate this into a function and then share it like we did with load cart. However, we have an easier option here. Remember that in use effect, at the end, we have this dependency array. So this array determines when use effect runs. Right now, it's empty, which means use effect will only run once. However, we can put values inside this array. And whenever a value changes, it will rerun the use effect. In our situation, we can put the value cart inside this dependency array. And now, whenever the cart changes, it will rerun the use effect and update the payment summary. And that makes sense. Every time the cart changes, we do want to update the payment summary in case the cost of the order changes. So in React, there are often multiple solutions to do something, and we should try to pick the cleanest solution. Also note that this will cause the delivery options to be reloaded, which is not really necessary. So we could separate reloading the payment summary into another use effect, but I'll leave this as an exercise. So now let's save, and we'll go to our website. And now when we update the delivery option, notice that the payment summary also updates to show the new delivery price. And now this feature is working. So now let's save this into Git. We'll go back to our code and open the Git section. And here we'll use the message create update delivery option feature and commit. Next, we're going to go to our website and we're going to work on deleting an item from the cart. So we're going to practice making a delete request to the backend. First, we're going to find the code for this delete link. We'll go to our code and in our files, we're going to find the order summary component. And we're going to scroll down in this component and find the delete link. If you did the exercises, this might be inside a cart item details component. Now for this delete link, we're going to add an onClick attribute equals curly brackets, and we'll give this a function to run. Let's call it delete cart item. And let's create this function above. So I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to create the function inside this loop because I need access to this cart item to delete. So in here, we'll create the function const delete cart item equals a function. And let's make this an async function because we know we're going to make a request to the backend. And first, let's import Axios. So we'll scroll up, and at the top, we'll import Axios from a string Axios. And then inside this function, my backend can receive a request called delete/API/cart items. And this will delete a product from the cart. So we'll do Axios dot delete and brackets. This sends a request with the type delete to the backend. For the URL path, we're going to use a template string, and we'll do /API/cart-items/ and we're going to insert the product ID in the URL again. This is just a naming convention that my backend uses. So we're going to insert the ID of what we want to delete. In this case, we need to give the backend the product ID we want to delete. So the product ID is saved inside the cart item. So we're going to give the backend the cart item dot product ID. And that's it. When my backend receives a request with the type delete and this URL path, it's going to delete this product from the cart. So after deleting the product, let's reload the cart. First, at the front of this, we'll type await to wait for this code to finish. And then we're going to await load the cart and brackets. So I have load cart already in the order summary. If you did the exercises from the previous lesson, you may need to pass this function into your component using a prop. So now let's go down, and that's all we need to delete a product from the cart and then reload and update the page. Let's save. We'll go to the website, and we're going to delete this first product. And notice it updates the cart, and it also updates the payment summary. If we delete another product, you notice it updates the cart and updates the payment summary. So that's how we make the delete link work. I'll leave updating the quantity in the cart as an exercise. So now let's save this into Git. We'll open the Git section, and then here we'll use the message create delete cart item feature and commit. Let's go back to the website. And in the checkout page, we're going to add the ability to create an order. So first, let's find the code for this place order button. We'll go back to our code. And in our files, we're going to open the payment summary component. And we're going to scroll down to the bottom to this place order button. And to this button, we're going to add a prop on click equals curly brackets, and we'll give it a function. Let's call it create order. And now let's scroll up and create this function. So up here, we're going to create const, and we'll name it create order equals an async function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. Again, we're going to make a request to the backend to create the order. So at the top, we're going to import Axios from a string Axios. And in here, for my backend, we can send a request with the type post and the URL path /API/orders to create an order. So we'll use the code axios.post to make a request with the type post and then give it the URL path /API/orders. And that's all we need. remember the cart is already saved in the backend. So the backend can take that cart and create an order for us. So let's wait for this code to finish using await. And after we create an order, the backend will remove everything from our cart. So we also need to reload our cart here. First, we need to get the load cart function, and that can be found in the checkout page. So here we get load cart from the props, and we're going to share this with the payment summary. So we'll scroll down, and in the payment summary, we'll share load cart using a prop load cart equals curly brackets load cart and save. And then inside the payment summary, at the top, in the props, we'll get comma load cart. And now after we create an order, we're going to await load cart and brackets to reload the cart and update the page. Finally, after we create an order, let's also redirect to the orders page so we can see our new order. To do that, React Router provides a hook that lets us navigate to another page or go to another page. At the top, we're going to import curly brackets, use navigate from React-Router. And at the top of our component, we're going to use const navigate equals use navigate and brackets. So use navigate gives us a function, and this function lets us navigate to or go to another page in our app. So after we create an order and we reload the cart, let's navigate to the orders page using navigate brackets and a string, and we're going to navigate to /orders. Now, navigate is not asynchronous, so it finishes immediately, and we don't need to await this code. Let's save, and we'll go to the website and test out the place order button. So we could update the delivery option to get a shipping cost, and then click place order. And now you can see that it created a new order. You'll also see that it updated the cart, so the quantity is now 0, and it navigated us to the orders page. Once we are on the orders page, there's some code at the top of the orders page that loads the orders from the backend and updates the page. And that's how we're able to see our newest order here. So that's how we create an order. I'll leave making these add to cart buttons work as an exercise. So now we finished all the major features of our project. We can add products to our cart, we can update the cart, and we can create an order. And you'll see that in the real world, we use a backend to manage and update all the data. And in our React code, we just make requests to the backend and then update the page. The advantage of letting the backend manage the data is that it will simplify our code a lot. So now let's save this into Git. Go to the Git section, and at the top, we'll type make create order button work and commit. And now we finished all the major features of our project. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to create automated tests in React to make sure our code still works whenever we make changes. And that's the end of this lesson. In this lesson, we learned data mutation, which means to update data in the backend. We learned different types of requests, like get, post, put, and delete. We sent a post request to add products to the cart and to create an order. We sent a put request to update the cart. We sent a delete request to delete a product from the cart. We used the dependency array of useEffect to update the payment summary whenever the cart changes. we learned the use navigate hook, which lets us navigate to another page using our code. Thanks for watching so far. If you find this course valuable, you can support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing. You can also check out the premium version of this course, where you'll get all the lessons ads-free, broken down into small videos, as well as additional lessons and more projects that are not in the public React course. Currently, the premium course contains 11 lessons, and I'll be adding more lessons in the future. You can also get a certificate of completion, create comments or questions on specific topics, get progress tracking, search, and course notes. You can also check out the membership, where you can get this course ads-free, separated by each lesson, AI videos, backend tutorials, and more. Thanks again, and let's continue with the course. Here are some exercises to help you practice what we learned in this lesson. In this lesson, we're going to add automated tests to our app. Automated tests means using code to test our app. This is more efficient than manually opening the app and clicking around to test it. To create automated tests in React, we're going to use an NPM package. The two most popular packages for automated testing are Jest and Vitest. We're going to use Vitest because it integrates well with Vite, but Jest and Vitest are very similar. If you learn one, you can easily learn the other. First, we're going to install Vitest to our project. So we're going to go to our command line and open the tab that's running the front end, and we'll stop the Vite server using Control-C, and we're going to npm install --save -dev Vitest. So save dev means that Vitest is only for development. This package is not needed to run our app or to run our website. And we're also going to add @ to give Vitest a specific version. So you can click this link in the description, go to lesson 9, and here you'll find the version of Vitest that we'll install. So we'll copy that version and then paste it in here and press enter to install Vitest. Now that we installed Vitest, we're ready to create our first automated test. So there are different types of automated tests that we can create. The first type is called unit tests. A unit test means we test one unit or one piece of the code. For example, if we look at our files and we open our utils folder and open money.js, if we test a function like format money, this would be considered a unit test because it's just one piece of the code. However, if we test something like the product component here, testing components like this are not unit tests because they use many different pieces of code together. So we'll start by creating unit tests for format money. So we're going to go to this money.js file, and beside this file, we're going to create a new file for the tests. And we'll name it the same, money, but this time we'll end with .test.js. So the naming convention is to put it beside the original file and end it with .test.js. Now inside this test file, at the top we'll import curly brackets it